Hi everybody, this is God's Girl G, and you are watching conversations about Christian singleness. And I'm sorry that it's taken me so long to post another video, but today I want to come at you really quick about forgiveness. This is just something that I actually, a video when I was thinking about things to do to try to put some encouragement and help out there for singles. This is something that, again, in my prayer time, I felt led to start talking about because I really do feel that in so many instances that when we are in the process, first of all, in our Christian walk, and we are either looking to find somebody, or whether it's just from a friendship mode or just for a serious relationship that will lead to marriage, one of the things that can really hinder that process is having unforgiveness in our heart. This is not something that you should take lightly. It's something that's very serious. Couple of things that I just jotted down here that I wanted to share is that, first of all, we need to understand regarding forgiveness is that Jesus taught about it when he was doing the Sermon on the Mount, and his disciples had come to him and said, "Lord, teach us how to pray." That whole about "My Father which thou art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come," and so forth. He mentioned in there about forgiveness. Now, why would Jesus do that when he was setting us up in a skeleton prayer if it wasn't something that was very important, that if you have unforgiveness in your heart? And one of the things when I was going through my process of going back and releasing people and forgiving them for the things that they've done to me, one of the things that was brought to my attention was that many times when we hold on to unforgiveness, we are not allowing God's hand to be released to move on that other person, to release pretty much the karma on them. Many times when we hold on to unforgiveness, we think we're punishing the other person. But in fact, we are punishing ourselves because it is preventing us from moving forward. If you think about it as like a ship, and if unforgiveness is an anchor, if you put an anchor down and you're not budging, that ship cannot go forward. And that is the same thing with your life when you have unforgiveness in there. And how many know only God can get the person back better than what we can? And we think, again, holding on to that unforgiveness will punish that other person, but it's actually punishing us. That other person is not sitting at home saying, woe is me, I've upset, so-and-so. They're not doing that. They're moving on with their lives. And one of the best ways that you can get back with somebody is forgiving them and releasing them and moving forward in your life and living it successfully. Something else, another reason why we should forgive, because it leads to better health. Many times when there's unforgiveness in your spirit because you're dwelling on the pain and you're like, I'm not releasing that person, you first of all, your mental well-being is messed up, and second of all, there's physical effects to that as well, such as insomnia. It could be high blood pressure, it could be arthritis. There are a number of things that when we have unforgiveness in our heart that impacts our physical body, and that's how serious forgiveness is. Now, I want to also talk about, well, how do you know you need to forgive somebody? How do you know that? Well, think of it this way. If you harbor, when you think about that person, there's that little tinge of there, and you know what I'm talking about, then that's probably somebody that you need to forgive. And one of the things that you can do is that in your prayer time, you can actually go back and try to find out, what, God, bring those people to remembrance to me that I need to forgive. And so that's something that I want to make sure that I bring to your attention also. Now let's talk about how do you go through the process of forgiveness. And I'm going to read some information. It's actually, I'm reading from the top 10 steps to forgiveness. And I got this actually from, the website is www.top10.org. And it was some really good information in here. And there's a couple of things that I want to review. Number one, understand that forgiveness does not mean that you're giving permission for that behavior to be repeated. That's not what forgiving does. Also recognize who is being hurt by your non-forgiveness, and that, as we've discussed, that is you who are being hurt. The other person's not being hurt. You're being hurt because you're holding on to that pain, and you're holding on, and you're actually becoming the victim over and over again. Every time you replay that scenario in your head, you're becoming the victim over and over again until you release them and say, you know what, God bless you. For those of you that have exes out there, ex-husbands, ex-wives, or whatever, you have to release them to move on with your life. And if every time that you look at them and you see them, you're still getting upset, you need to release them. You do not have to have the requirement of understanding why in order to forgive someone. Well, why did he do it? And why did she do it? Why did she have to cheat on me? You don't have to understand the why in order to release someone, because at the end of the day, it's ultimately between them and God. And God will do what he does best. And that's a whole process. The principle of you actually will reap what you sow. So if you sow good, you'll reap good. If you sow bad, well, guess what? You'll reap bad. It's all called karma, and it all comes back before you get off of this earth. Another step is make a list of what you need to do in order to, or who you need to forgive. We had talked about that earlier. Ask God in your prayer time to bring back to your remembrance, you know what? Give me a list of names of the people that, talking about going all the way back to your childhood. You know, who do I need to forgive? Whether it's a loved one who did something to you, a sibling, a grandparent, a clergy person, anything. You need to make a list of those people and ask God to help you remember that. And then you need to acknowledge your part. In other words, were you honest about your hurt, or did you hide the fact that the behavior hurt you? Now that's a serious thing right there. And so you need to, again, in your prayer time, talk to God about that. You need to make a list of what you gained from the relationship, whatever form the relationship that it was. Looking back, you may be focusing on the negatives and the hurts, but yet they were, if they were repeated, you must have stayed to allow the repetition. So you need to take a look at that as well, because you don't want to go into your future repeating the same behavior and getting yourself into the same position. You have to ask yourself and have to ask God, help me to learn what I need to learn from that lesson of hurt. And then you need to move on with that information. You can write a letter to the person and just say, and you don't even have to mail it, but I mailed mine. I had a person that from 2 years ago that I needed to release, and I mailed her a letter. And I just said, you know, whether what you said or did was meant for good or bad, I release you and I forgive you, and I wish you good health and prosperity. You don't have to necessarily get into the details, nor do you have to mail it, but sometimes getting all of that out will help you verbalize what you have caught up in your heart. And then visualize the person that you are forgiving being blessed by your forgiveness. Because even though someone hurts you, it doesn't exclude them from the fact that they also need God, and that there's some hurt up in them as well, and that could be the reason why they hurt you. And next, understand that after you have done all of that, then you have freed yourself to go into your future. One of the things that I wanted to point out in closing is that when we don't forgive people, we go into another relationship harboring all of those hurt feelings, harboring all of that victimization, and then we make that person we're in a relationship with subject to all of our hostility that we have toward another person. And that should not be. So singles out there, if you have any unforgiveness in your heart, it is so important to go through that process of unforgiveness and releasing that person, not for their benefit, but for your benefit. And then finally, don't forget about forgiving yourself. Sometimes we are our worst critic. And I always tell people, you know what? There's no reason for you to say anything bad to me that I have not already said to myself. And sometimes, you know, we are harder on ourselves than what we should. But we need to recognize that we are God's child, and we have God residing on the inside of us. And yes, we'll make mistakes. And yes, you know, I can't guarantee I won't make another mistake. But it's what you learn from those mistakes. Life teaches us lessons all the time. And what are you learning from those lessons? So again, that's just, again, my take on unforgiveness. And if you have any comments for me or any questions, you can actually email me at godsgirlg at gmail.com, and there's no period or hyphen between God's Girl G, but again, God's Girl G at gmail.com, or you can actually post a comment to the video. So hopefully you enjoyed it and it provided some help for you. You take care and have a great day.